Number one, Dr. Alan Hornfall just passed away this week, and he was on the council here from 1971 1975 till 1981. And he was very well respected in this town, and he had a very lucrative dental business here. And in 1999, I had the pleasure of going to Honduras with him, and the Episcopal Church sent a group to Honduras on a mission trip, and they allowed one Methodist to go, being me, and they allowed one Baptist to go, being Mike MacArthur. So, but Dr. Hornfall did surgery there. He worked every day, the 10 days we were there, attended to patients, and one thing after another. He was a very caring, giving person. That's what I would say about it.
Mayor Stallings, before you proceed, I think it's noteworthy, one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is the fact that Edenton and Chowan County is home of the champions between the D.F. Walker High School and John A. Holmes High School and former Edenton High School. And he was a longtime tennis coach.
He was.
At the high school here. He coached my wife back in 1983 in the state championship, and in 2012 and 2013 coached my daughter in the state championship. And I wish I had his stats, but he had one of the best records in all of North Carolina for tennis coaches.
Mayor, he also taught both my daughters in tennis. They won the championship. This is back in the kind of late 80s.
And the thing about it is, you never heard anybody say anything negative about him.
No.
Never heard a bad word said about him, as far as I know. I've not ever heard one anyway.
He was head of the St. Paul's Episcopal Young Churchman, so he would take us on trips.
Oh, yeah?
We tested every bit of patience he and Lucy ever had, and he never got mad.
And Mayor Stallings and Anne Marie, I think it would be appropriate not only for the minutes to reflect that you have honored him with your comments tonight, but I don't know if there would be any objection to us drafting a resolution and presenting it for the next meeting, because he was a fellow town councilman.
Yeah.
He served the community as a dentist, and he also served and was a mentor to many high school female athletes. Chief Bass is here. He coached Chief Bass's daughter in high school, and he's left quite a mark, and probably deserving, if y'all agree, of a resolution
I
in
think
his
that
honor.
would be wonderful. I absolutely do.
It was 112 in somewhere.
Yeah.
Anne Marie, do we need to put that in a motion or anything?
We'll work on that. Glad we can.
And the next thing I would say is, as you all know, the governor had another session this afternoon. I did not hear it myself, but my wife took a few notes. And 1.1 million people in North Carolina have already had both shots. But the thing that he cautioned about was, do not back off of the three W's. Don't back off of those. And we are now in the yellow. We were in the red, and we're now all the way back out of that color and into the yellow. And only 6 counties in the state now are in the red. So I think that's wonderful news. Okay, now we'll get back to our regular program, and we'll stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, Councilman Poole will do the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow our heads. Father God, we thank you for another opportunity to come together as a council of this great town. We thank you, Lord, for what you have blessed us to do in the past. And we pray that you will help us in the future to do the right thing and to honor our officers of all our offices in this town. And Lord, we ask that you continue to bless us in our vision to make this a better place to live and be successful. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, now we need to approve the minutes of our special meeting of October 26th and our regular meetings on November the 10th and December the 8th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
I just want to thank whoever did them, did a great job. I mean,
Okay.
Tammy, great job.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carried. Okay, and at this time, I'd like to remind everyone that the public hearing for text amendment to the UDO pertaining to regulations for short-term rentals and Airbnbs was conducted on February the 9th. Action on the text amendment was tabled to February 22nd, and at that meeting, considerable discussion took place, and the council agreed to table to tonight's meeting. Now, Ms. Bryant will give us a summary of the revisions that she and Town Attorney Hood Ellis made based on the council's request at the February 22nd meeting. And Hood, I'd like to welcome you with us. You're with us on Zoom, and we certainly welcome you here.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm happy to be here again before you tonight. I'm going to ask if Tammy will share on her screen a map, and I believe all of you got this in your packet. I wanted just to have this up and talk about it briefly before I move on to the amendments to the ordinance that were requested for you all to review. So this map is as of last week of our current short-term rentals here in Edenton. I contacted Melissa Radke with the tax office to get the latest numbers and updates. But as you might imagine, that number is very fluid and depends on if they've observed a rental occurring online by their own detective methods, and also reporting of occupancy tax to their office. In fact, just since I've done this map, I've heard that there are a couple more in the Mill Village that may not be present on this map that have been operating. So this is the minimum, let's say.
Can I ask you, don't they have a prohibition against a certain number of days in the Mill Village and the covenants?
They do, and that's a whole battle being worked out right now between the owners and Preservation North Carolina.
I mean, they have a certain, you can do it for a certain number of days,
Right.
and then you, yeah.
But those are like neighborhood covenants. They're
Yeah,
like
right.
an HOA covenants. But the yellow stars are those that we knew were operating as of last January and have not reported taxes to the tax office in quite some time, so they're under investigation. But one other thing I want to point out is the red star. That is a sailboat in the marina that is advertised as a nightly rental. So just add to the continuing puzzle that this situation is. But we could regulate that, and because it's within the municipal limits, just the same as we would the residences. So last month, you asked for us to draft language that would show you several different options that you could have for this ordinance. As it was presented, whole house rentals, which is, as you know, an entire dwelling unit with no on-site owner. The presentation made by staff was that type of rental would be allowed in downtown commercial and neighborhood commercial properties through administrative review, which would be my office, and that if it were proposed in a residential district, it would go to the Board of Adjustment for a special use permit. And in both cases, all of the requirements of this ordinance would have to be followed, and the Board of Adjustment could A, find that it was inappropriate if it, conflicted with one of their 4 review criteria, which is very similar to what you have for your conditional use permit review, or they could issue the permit if it was in compliance with the requirements of the ordinance. However, in the discussion that you all had, you asked to consider the option of not allowing whole house rentals in any residential districts. So you would allow them in the neighborhood and downtown commercial districts, and you would allow homestay, which is a room in someone's house, or accessory dwelling, so a guest house or a room over a detached garage, which in the residential districts through administrative review. So in your packet, the amended ordinance, after my efforts and then help from Hood, thankfully, you'll see, and it's the light gray highlighted portions. I think it was Councilman Coleman that said, you've gotten to the end of the revisions when you're choosing light gray as a highlight color. But just to point out specifically, on page 3, there's the addition of section 4A, number 2. There was some rewording here that allows, that's an option to allow the whole house short-term rentals through special use permit, and states specifically that they have to be in compliance with that section of our ordinance that governs special use permits. And then finally, I think the biggest thing for you to review is the last section, section 7, or section 8, on page 8, effective date. So this is what would occur or could occur depending on what you decide regarding those short-term rentals that are currently existing. So if you were to adopt the draft ordinance with the requirement that a special use permit be given for whole house rentals in residential zones, that means all existing whole house rentals in residential zones, so think back to that map, would be required, potentially, you could require them to come in at some time and get a special use permit, and that was the first kind of presentation to you. You also have the option to just leave them grandfathered, meaning they can continue to operate as is until they cease operation for a certain period of time without intent to reinstate, and then they would then have to follow the current rules. Or you can do something if you chose to not allow whole house rentals in residential districts and you leave what's existing non-conforming. You can choose to either leave them as existing non-conforming situations or grandfather them, or you can do an amortization, which is the second option on that last page, and you would have to determine a length of time that you felt was appropriate to allow them to continue operating until which time they should cease. I'm thankful that there are attorneys on the council as well as helping us tonight, but you all will know better about the process for amortization so that it's strong enough to stand up to any legal challenge. But that's sort of an overview. If you've got questions of me, I'm happy to answer.
I got one. So
Sure.
I got a ton of letters and conversations, and I think Councilman Coleman and I got a lot of talk this morning at the coffee shop. One of the most, I thought, thoughtful letters I got was from Ms. Nossing, and it said, if we didn't eliminate them, could we do a special use permit for a period of time and then have a review period on that? And I thought that was really, really thoughtful. And Hood, what's your thought on that?
We studied that. I can't give you a concrete answer like a cited case that says that's legal or illegal, but the consensus was that that won't work. That you can't if they come in and satisfy the conditions to get the permit in the beginning, it's hard to have a sunset on it to say that it goes away in the future, just because of time, and make them come back in. Again, if they met the conditions that existed at the time and they got the permit and they hadn't, and they're not in violation of any of those conditions, they're in compliance with the STR ordinance, then there's really no basis to try to revoke the permit by making it expire and making them come back in. One of the David Owens' book on land use law in North Carolina says you can't base a permit existence on future anticipated problems that don't exist at the time that the permit's granted, and I think that's the problem we face.
Well, so if we did a special, if you have a special use permit and then they violate it, let's talk, what, like,
Sure.
so if you put one up and then there's a lot of noise and all the things
Right.
that everybody's worried about, what happens?
So we do have a whole section on penalties and
Yeah.
enforcement in the ordinance, and it's basically a reiteration of our section, Article 7 in the UDO on penalties and enforcement. So it would fall under the same category, meaning they could receive a citation from my office noting the violations, and there could also be a request from my office to the Board of Adjustment to revoke a special use permit, and then the burden would be on the town to prove why that permit should be revoked, and you would present the evidence of the complaints, that type of thing. There also can be civil penalties attached, as well as a criminal, I guess, a misdemeanor penalty for violation.
Well, and since I'm doing all the talk, I'll say one more thing, then I'll let everybody else talk, but I think that what we ought to do is, if I were voting on this alone, send it back to the planning board, because we never had this option on the table to not have it, and because I think people really, on both sides, need to come in and talk about that, because I think there's a ton of, there are people that are for it, and there are people that are against it, and this was something we just came up and, the last meeting, came up with. It might be the right thing, it might be the wrong thing, but I think that it needs a hearing on it once at that level, and then bring it back to us, because I think it is a big decision. It's an economic development thing. It's got lots of, nuisance problems, and I understand both sides of it, but I really think that people need to talk to the planning board first, and then bring it back and try to get a sense of where people are with this. That's my take, because it went through the planning board with the special use permit, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about not doing it at all, and I just feel like everybody needs to speak on that, because I've heard from a lot of people, and good things on both sides,
Yes, both
so
sides, both sides.
that's my take. That's my vote for the evening. So,
I think Elizabeth here and the staff and Hood has done a tremendous job in taking our thoughts to the last meeting and laying them out this way. I feel that you've really taken this seriously. Like Sandra, I think all of us have had our ears bent over the past few days with people who feel that whole house rentals in residential areas will be the ruination of Edenton, or it will be the panacea that will solve all our financial well-being. It's sort of the extremes. And our role is to try and find some middle ground to both respect the integrity of our neighborhoods and to look after the well-being of our financial condition. That's hard to do. I think Hood said we can't regulate the numbers or the locations of whole house rentals in residential areas. We can't put a cap on it. Like we're going to have 25 and no more. We can't do that. My thinking is that the best we can do is to go ahead and not allow whole house rentals in residential neighborhoods, except for those that are already existing, grandfather them in, and to, that would give us, I don't know how many, we don't know really, but somewhere 15, maybe 20
About that, yeah.
whole house rentals in existence, which should provide a significant number of housing for a significant number of people. And I would go ahead and, I mean, I'm open to that, Sambo, but I'd go ahead just to see where we are and see if there's support for going ahead and passing a resolution prohibiting whole house rentals in residential neighborhoods and all the other things that might go with it.
And those that are already existence would be grandfathered in.
Fine,
Those in existence would be grandfathered
it'd
in.
be grandfathered in, the 15 to 20 or whatever.
You know, I tend to agree with Councilman Dixon. I don't think our planning boards and our staff has had the opportunity to fully look at this. I do compliment Elizabeth and her staff at doing a very, very good job just in a matter of a few weeks in getting us a couple proposals. But a lot of these proposals were not before the planning board. And I want to make sure that we're true to the process. And I think by returning to them, we would be true to the process. Now, I will say this, there's a lot of frustration among community people and also this councilman that we've been working on this forever. But I don't think we need to rush at the end. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. I see this being resolved.
Not the group of it.
Yeah, within the next 30 days or so. And it's interesting that Councilman Coleman mentions a happy medium, and I agree with him. I think we differ somewhat on what that happy medium would be. And when I came on this council, I came on here with the thought that when we're presented with an issue or a problem, let's not immediately jump to the most stringent, the most restrictive, and the most intrusive, particularly to property rights. And I feel that like if we go straight to a prohibition, straight out prohibition of these short-term rentals in residential areas, we are doing that. We're jumping to the most extreme measure that we can take. And what we would in effect be doing would be punishing people that would run and manage their short-term rental in the right way, and punishing them for the people that manage theirs in the wrong way. So I'm not certain that I'm ready to make the jump that Councilman Coleman wants us to make right now. And I think the important thing that stands out to me, I mentioned this earlier, Elizabeth and her staff have worked tremendously hard on this. Hood has worked tremendously hard on this. And we have some tools available to us that we have not had in the past. If we have a bad owner or a bad manager of their short-term rental, we now have the tools under the special use permit process to go in and say, look, you lost your chance. You have abused this system. We put trust in you and gave you a permit. You've not been playing by the rules. Your people that come in and rent have not been playing by the rules. So your permit is revoked. So we have a mechanism in place that's been designed by Hood and Elizabeth and staff that lets us attack the bad apples, but let the good apples continue to operate. And so that's my position. And so I would like to see us give these new regulations that don't outright prohibit the short-term rentals in residential districts, have these new rules show us, do they work or they don't work? If they don't work, we'll come back and take a look at it. But I tend to think if revocation is available as a tool to us, I think we can make it work. In order for us to take a closer look at it, again, keeping in mind that there is frustration about let's get to the end of this, I do agree with Councilman Dixon's suggestion that we allow them to take one more look at it and continue to take public input, because I'm like Roger and Sambo, I've heard enough of it. And come back and see what the planning board thinks and consider all our options. We're very, very close, and I just don't want us to rush it at the very end.
Are we saying that the only houses that will be up for rent like this are houses that are existing now, that no more can come to the forefront and exist?
There's two options, so that would be one option, where it's just what is here now would be grandfathered in and no additional whole house rentals in residential districts. Or you could choose to review whole house rentals through that special use permit process, so that, yes, a new one could come here, but they'd have to go and get a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment in order to open.
Okay, as long as they get a special use,
And they meet all the requirements.
they could operate. Okay.
As long as they abide by the rules, and if they don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's a very important issue right there. as long as they abide by the rules. And I'm all for strike two. You know, somebody has, like the situation we had previously, that somebody didn't take care of it, didn't do what they were supposed to do. You know, we give them one chance. If they come back with a second situation like that, then we pull their permit and take it away from them. You know, we need to have some stringent rules that we can go by, and of course, we got to put that in there at the beginning. We can't come back and put it in there afterwards, but I think we need to have some stringent rules. And I'm referring mostly to the whole house, because the ones where they just rented out a room or part of their house or something, that they're living there, they're gonna keep by the rules. But this whole house rental agreement is entirely different. So,
Mayor, I think it's goal number 6 in our vision statement mentions something about growth in our population. And personally, I do not see additional whole house rentals going into residential neighborhoods as growing our population. I like to quote Andy Knopfsinger, who mentioned what these whole house rentals do is compromise our sense of community. And I think I kind of agree with Councilman Coleman on his stance on that. And, just go with the whole house rentals. Just stick with commercial neighborhood and downtown commercial.
I mean, I must admit, I would not want a whole house rental next to my house. You know, so, you know.
I think, it sort of eliminates the opportunity to achieve our desired demographic. And, we want families, young families and retirees to come into our neighborhoods and live. Yes, I would not want a whole house rental next to my house either.
But are we seeing that someone that has a whole house rental that can rent this house to people that will go by the law and abide by the agreement, that we don't want them to come here for a weekend or a week to stay in Edenton like that? Because that's what we're getting. Is people that's on a vacation or take a week or a weekend
Or wedding
and come to Edenton to spend time.
Well, again, I think we can be able to restrict how many people can stay in that house, how many cars can be parked out front, whether they can be parked in the street. There's so many things that needs to be taken in consideration there.
Yeah, we could add some more conditions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one
my
man's
feeling
opinion.
is that it'll, like for weddings and stuff, I mean, I know that I probably got the biggest house in Eden beside me, and it might be one day a Airbnb, but.
Sample, look what happened to Ann Edwards.
Yeah,
That
but
was
it was,
a wedding party.
I think that house would be, it might not ever be a single family house again anyway, so I mean, some of these houses might, it's just difficult, to figure out a solution. But it is part of economic development, and it helps our downtown, it brings in tourists, it spends money here, and all of that is, I think it's just something we need to really, really think about before we do it, just because we added it at the last minute. I think we need to have hearings on it and get people's feelings on it, because I've gotten so much from both sides, and I just think I don't think we put that on the table, and whether we strengthen the requirements like you're saying, or whether we just get rid of them altogether. But I think we need to talk about what impact it'll have both on the neighborhoods and economically.
Well, if you, everybody would, go ahead, Adam.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'll speak after you.
If everybody would abide by what's supposed to do, what you would do, or what I would do, or something like that, that's one thing. But we know that some people are not
They're
going to
not
do
gonna
that.
do it. But, I hear you, saying there would be some repercussions, and I appreciate that. But, most people came here for the sense of community, and, these little streets, they don't wanna, some people don't want a whole house rental extra, yeah. I'm going back to Ann Edwards' situation, with that wedding party, next to her.
Is there gonna be a form that each homeowner that's renting out with a full house or room that requires the people to fill out a form to say how many rooms they got to rent out? And not only that, how many families they can have in the house and what different families do they drink, smoke, because it's a safety thing. On TV, I've seen more fires being started in Virginia this year, and Thanksgiving right up to that. And a lot of people in the rooms, I don't think the homeowners have time or take time to watch everybody. So I guess if I would move into one of the rooms that they would feel like that I could do what I want to do, you know. But there should be some regulations that if you're gonna have a guidelines of what they can do and what they can't do, I think that should apply to everybody.
There's definitely guidelines set up in the ordinance about basic public safety, so the number of people that could stay in the dwelling is based on the number of bedrooms. We have a requirement for smoke detectors. You remember that's one of the first things we talked about with regard to this was just fire safety. We can't stipulate that there not be consumption of alcoholic beverages. We have taken out that they can't provide meals, so they can't, provide bed and breakfast type services to in an Airbnb. It would just be maybe some coffee in the cabinet or something like that. No meal provisions. But there is an attempt within the ordinance to provide some regulation about parking, number of cars, that type of thing.
I could go with Hack and Sambo and put it back to the planning board if that's what you think would be in the best interest of the town.
Well, I was gonna say, I've got two comments, and they're actually,
I'm
thank
sorry, I
you,
didn't
no,
hear you.
thank you, Councilman Coleman, because my comments dovetail with yours. One, I think all the discussion that we're having is good support for Councilman Dixon's suggestion, but I think where we are procedurally, we've got two proposals before us, as I see it. One would be Councilman Dixon's proposal to table it and let us get more information and let the planning board get more information. And then the second proposal is Councilman Coleman's proposal that we move forward, despite what he just said, move forward with a vote on the draft that prohibits whole house short-term rentals in residential districts. And so one or the other could make a motion, we'd see if we got a second, and we would see if that motion had any support. From what I'm hearing from Councilman Coleman, it sounds like at this point in time, without giving up his position and his thoughts, he would be in favor of Councilman Dixon's motion if Councilman Dixon made that motion.
So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. To send this back to the
Is that
planning
good?
board.
That's good.
Is that what it was, to send it back to the planning board?
We need to vote, don't take it.
Well, I think we'll think so.
All right, any further discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried, so it goes back to the planning board.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Hood.
Thank you. Very
Okay,
great.
now we'll move to our committee reports. And the first on the committee is Public Works, and that's chaired by Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, we have one item of business. It's recommended the council approve revised engineering service agreement renovations and upgrades to wastewater treatment plant as presented. Mayor, as discussed at our February 26th committee meeting in regards to the improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. The USDA has requested the town to revise the existing engineering services agreement and amendments into one agreement and into one agreement document, and that includes current USDA required language. With that said, I put this agreement revision in the form of a motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then next on our list is Administrative Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We had previously recommended, coming out of the committee meetings, that we approve the proposed sign that would recognize the D.F. Walker High School state champions and the Edenton High School and John A. Holmes state champions. I would request that we consider tabling that for two reasons. One, athletic director at Holmes, Wes Matera, is unable to join us tonight. And certainly that's importantly, but more importantly, it has been brought to our attention that the 1962-63 D.F. Walker High School football team won the Eastern Championship. And there were times in North Carolina athletic history where if you would go as far as you could go, you were considered a champion. And we need to research whether that year was one of the years that you only went as far as the Eastern or the Western District. Now the Eastern District champ plays the Western District champ, and you have a state champion, but we may want to consider including that in our sign if they did play as many games as they could and win their final game of the season. And we'd like to include them if they're worthy of that honor. So I would just move that we table that and get more information on the 1962-1963 D.F. Walker High School team, and also have Coach Matera be able to let us know what he found out about that.
Okay.
So if that's okay, I did have one more comment, and this comes from John Mitchner, and John is very, very involved in the town, has always been very, very involved in John A. Holmes athletics and John A. Holmes football, and he made a request that I don't think we'll be able to honor, but I would like to read into the minutes what he said. He wanted to add to the sign certain verbiage, and it ended up being too much verbiage. It would make the sign look too busy, and it would also cause the sign to be too big for our own requirements and for DOT's requirements. But Mr. Mitchner wanted it mentioned, and I'd like to tell him that I mentioned it, and it is in the records, that the Edenton Aces football team of 1964 and 1965 were not only undefeated conference and state champions, but also members of a unique four-year performance. 1962, 1963, 1964, 1965. The Aces never lost to their main rival, Elizabeth City, and never lost at all during that four-year period. They won all their games except for two. There were two ties during that four-year period, and they were entirely undefeated with those two ties. And that would certainly be a little much for the sign. And those teams that did during that era that won championships will be honored as champions, but we certainly couldn't put all that on the sign because of our sign requirements. But I did want to honor Mr. Mitchner for all his efforts over the years to promote our sports teams, and just enter that into the record as far as the minutes.
All right, great. Councilman Hyde, would you reinstate or restate your motion?
I would just ask that we table the decision on the sign that would honor our champions until we can get more information on the 1962 and 1963 D.F. Walker High School football team.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Councilman Hyde's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The next matter for consideration from the Administrative Committee is that it is recommended that council adopt the resolution authorizing upset bid process for the sale of the property at the old landfill that has a physical address of 218 Poplar Neck Road. We discussed this, I think now at least 2 meetings, and I think the important thing for the public to know and also this council to know is it would follow the upset bid process that we follow with other properties that we've sold, such that the highest bidder would win, and hopefully that would be reflective of fair market value. So I would recommend and put it in the form of a motion that council adopt that resolution authorizing the upset bid process for that specific property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just wondering,
Yes, sir.
how is that publicized? How do we let the public know about the upset bid process?
The statute requires us to publish a legal notice in the newspaper, setting the terms and outlining what the process is. And
Okay.
I'll double check, but I think it has to be published 2 times, but I'll confirm that with you.
Okay.
I think that's correct, twice in the paper, yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, the third item that we need to discuss tonight from the administrative committee is the recommendation that council establish the mayor's task force on litter prevention, recycling, and the environment as previously presented. This is a matter that's near and dear to Councilman Coleman's heart, and also council has heard me speak several times on litter prevention and what I perceive and our citizens perceive as a litter problem. I think this would be a good task force for us to have, and I feel like they could come up with some strategies for us to better protect our environment, to give us some litter prevention techniques, and also look at the recycling issue. So I'll put that in the form of a motion that we establish the mayor's task force on litter prevention, recycling, and the environment.
Second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I will interject at this point, I think after this weather warms up a little bit, clears up a little bit, I'd like for us to set a Saturday morning, not at 6 o'clock, but Saturday, 5:30. For us to pick one of the on and off ramps for us to pick up litter at and get some advertisement out of that. So, any further discussion on that motion?
I think this is great. This is great.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And Mayor Stein, the last item of business that we have for full council tonight is that it's recommended that council reappoint the members to the various boards and commissions as has been previously presented. There is one carve out to that. Jacqueline Hardy Bond has served on our planning committee, and she has just requested that we not fill that spot yet, that she just needs a little more additional time to decide if she wants to continue on that committee. And so I would recommend that we accept the appointments to various boards and commissions as presented, and then decide upon that one particular spot at the next meeting.
Is there a time limit? Is she giving you
Well, I think probably we should put a time limit on
Yeah.
it that we need to know by next committee meeting or next full meeting. I would suggest, I don't know, this is all new to me, so I'm gonna rely upon Ms. Knighton to tell us.
I think,
30?
given that you've sent a big item back to the planning board and Jacqueline's been a part of that, it would be helpful to hear her recommendation, her wishes, certainly by the next committee meeting,
Right.
so that we can take that.
And will you notify, I mean, if
I
that,
will,
if-
I will, yes.
Let's just hold off on all of them until we get her. What about if we just hold off on all the things until we get her, until we know?
as long as that wouldn't cause a problem from a practical standpoint, Ms. Knighton, I don't have a problem with that.
It does, and people continue to serve
Okay.
until they're
Let's just,
successful.
think it might be, I think a good idea.
I would withdraw the recommendation that we act on it tonight and would move that we table this until we hear from all of the prospective candidates and take a look at this at our next meeting. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We will defer that. Okay, the next order of business comes on a new business, and we have a budget amendment for the general fund for the trolley and legal fees, and I will call on Ms. Knighton to take care of that for us.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your agenda packet, I had given you a description of the budget amendment that Virginia prepared. The first one pertaining to the new trolley. We knew we were going to incur expenses when we bought it to paint it, and it's recommended that the paint color is going to match the wayfinding signs and also the branding and the logo. So recommend you approve that budget amendment. And the second budget amendment is to add funds to the legal fees line item in the general fund. And as you know, we have had an incredibly busy fiscal year. Hood's been fantastic helping us and helping you with a lot of important issues. Particularly, you recall the CBS project and all of the legal work that was required with that, abandoning railroad property and abandoning alleys and paper streets and all that. And then also he's been helping us with our short-term rental ordinance, and we've had other projects as well. And then, of course, I did not anticipate the appeal for the fence to go back to court, so that has added a little bit more in legal fees. So Virginia's prepared the budget amendment and recommend approval for those funds.
Can we take care of that in one motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And item B,
Okay,
Ms.
Mayor?
Knighton?
Sure. As part of the wastewater treatment plant project, you know, we're looking for additional land to purchase to expand the spray fields. And Corey, who unfortunately is not with us tonight, he's battling a really bad cold, but he has been working with the Wooten Company, identifying potential sites based on examination of soils maps that are online. And we've identified 2 sites, and now is the time to do more geotechnical evaluation. And we procured proposals. We got 2 proposals, and we're recommending that the proposal from Terranon be approved for $142,000, and that will involve geotechnical evaluations on the two potential sites. The good news is that the USDA funding that you have secured through loan and grant will reimburse the town for this expense.
Great.
So the $20,000 is for the evaluation.
It's
Is it 20?
no, it's much more expensive
Yeah.
than that. It was $142,000.
Okay.
We had a proposal for $193,000 and then one for $142,000.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And item C, Ms. Knighton?
And that is the budget amendment that Virginia prepared to reflect the funding needed to pay for the services for Terracon. So that would add funding to the capital projects budget ordinance to pay for the geotechnical work.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion's passed.
Next item, Mayor?
Hey, Mayor, just going back, that 20,000 was for the legal fees, is that correct? That budget amendment? Was that for legal fees?
The 142 covered it all, I believe, didn't it?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, I wasn't sure, thank you.
The next item, item D, is approval of the assignment of an agreement with Holland Consulting Planners to Insight Planning and Development. And you recall, I think it was back in December, that you approved an agreement with Holland to help update the Unified Development Ordinance per the General Assembly's directive. And at that time, Dale Holland shared with us that he was planning on selling his firm to a member of the Holland team. And so we disclosed that to you all, and we told you that after the transaction was done, that you likely would have to approve assignment of the agreement that you approved with Holland to the new company. And early in the new year, the team came to Edenton and met with Elizabeth and I, and we were familiar with the person who purchased the business. I don't know that we've talked with them on the phone and emailed, and it was nice to meet face to face. But Dale assured us again that he would be the project coordinator for the work that you approved.
He's great to work with.
He
He is
is.
so great to work. I'm so happy about that.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for that.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion,
Second.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor, any discussion, any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, Mayor, the next item is another budget amendment, and this is for the electric fund, and it adds the revenue that was recently received from the sale of property in the redevelopment zone, 133 East Gale Street, and recommend approval of this budget amendment, and it will add $18,750 back to the budget. And we'll be hopefully using that soon. Elizabeth's working on appraisals for 2 other houses that we hope to be able to present to you for
That's a wonderful
Proposition.
thing that
It
we have
is. It really is.
started to do, I think. I know Sam will agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, Mayor, the last item under new business, I know the chief is real excited to be at this point. He has been working really hard, lining things up over the last couple of years, making sure that my friend, the county manager, and I were in sync with the timing of recommending this project to you. But you know that for the last couple of years, we've been talking to you about the need to purchase a new fire truck. And tonight, Chief's gonna give a brief presentation about the truck and the need. But what we're asking for tonight is for you to approve the submittal of an application that Virginia and the fire chief have prepared for funding to USDA rural development. And we're hopeful that we'll get a sizable grant from USDA and then a very low interest loan to cover the acquisition cost. So, Chief?
Mayor, Council, it's good to be here tonight to present hopefully our new truck to you. NFPA recommends us replacing trucks every 20 years, and the truck we're looking at replacing is actually, this will be similar to the new truck. It's going to be a rescue pumper. It'll have our rescue tools on it, and it'll also be used for firefighting. This would also help us get more trucks, and I'll get to it in just a minute. Right now, we're responding with 2 trucks on accidents in the county and in the town, and this would cut us down to 1 truck responding to wrecks and accidents and structure fires inside the city. This is the truck we're looking at replacing. Engine 1's a 1993 quality. It was built in Talladega, Alabama. It's a 1,000-gallon tank, 1250 pump on it. It's served the This truck does not leave the city unless it has to. It's always been a city truck that the town bought in 1993. Engine 1 will move to a reserve truck. This will give us our max points on our ISO rating. We'll come up for our ISO rating probably in about 2023, 2024. And this truck would give us our full max. The way it's rated is how each truck, how it responds. Right now, our ladder truck actually is a service truck. It's not considered a ladder truck because we do not have a reserve truck. So engine 1 would go to a reserve truck, and we would get max credit for our points on our apparatus. One of the trucks we're hoping that this new engine will replace is our 1986 Ford panel van. This is one of our service truck. It actually carries our SCBAs on it, our salvage covers and things along that line. So this truck would hopefully be going to surplus after we get the new one in. And the second truck was a county truck that we took over the education equipment around 1999. And this truck's a 97 Ford. It also would go to surplus. Our engine 8's a 2006. It's an engine that runs county calls and all accidents inside the city and county. It's got the extrication tools on it as well. This is our 2003 Pierce tanker. It's a county truck only. It does not go in the city because we have the hydrants in the city, and we actually go in the county and draft water, or we can get it out of hydrants and transport it to the fires. Our new truck can be a 450 horsepower truck. It'll be automatic with Allison transmission. It will seat 5 people. It will have a backup camera. The reason the backup camera is being put on there, right now it's a standard to put it on, but also backing in off Broad Street. We actually have a spotter who backs in with the guy in the road, and we still have people going on the opposite side of the traffic going around us while we're trying to back in. So this would give us another set of eyes while that person's watching. It also have 2 cabinets on the back wall for items, radios, things along that lines that will give us more storage space than what we have now. It'll have 5 air packs on it, a radio for each seat, so we'll have each guy, when they get out of the truck, they can grab a radio and have communications on the fire scene. It will have climate control, it will have vehicle data recorder, and that's mainly if it gets in wrecks and things like that, they can go back and read all what the truck was doing. On the back side glass, there'll be a silhouette of the U.S. flag in it. On the exterior of it, it's going to have exterior step lights, a 26-inch extended front bumper which will have a hose line in it, and another set of extrication tools if this gets approved by y'all. It'll have frontal impact protection, it'll have 4 scene lights, have hose bed lights so when the guys are loading hose at night they can see where they're at, not stepping off the side of the truck. It also have coffin boxes on the top, and what they'll be used for is put our cribbing and things like that we use for vehicle accidents. That'll be something we don't use a lot of, but it'll be on top of the truck where we can access it. It'll be a 1,000-gallon tank, a 1,500-gallon pump. It'll also have a 30-gallon foam tank on it. We can use that on house fires and car fires to put things out where we don't have to use a lot of water. Cross lays will be behind the roll-up doors. That will keep our hose from getting sunlight on them and where we can easily access them and get them out on calls. It'll have roll-up doors all the way around. It has swing-out tool boards where we can put our axes and pipe poles and all, where we can just pull them off, and it saves space and gives us more room on the truck to store other stuff that we need. It'll have slide-out trays and 16 adjustable shelves, so we can get some of our tools in there, like our salvage scope. We can stack them in there, and our cribbing, smaller cribbing and things like that in there. It'll have 3 SCBA storage bottles. We actually have a system on it where we can fit air bottles at a fire call. These storage bottles will be on the top of the truck and underneath the hose bed. The front grille will have the North Carolina flag in it. And just a little bit about the warranty. It'll be a 1-year material and workmanship. Engine's covered for 5 years. The steering gears for 3 years. A 50-year structural integrity warranty. Front axle will be 3 years. Our rear axle is 100,000 miles or 5 years. The cab is a 2-year. And Pierce command zone electronics for 5 years. And the Pierce body is 10 years. They make good fire trucks. We've already got 3 of them in our station that are Pierce's. And that's why we decided to go back with Pierce. The guys worked real hard for the last probably 9 months meeting, building the truck, talking to the salesman about changing specs and building this truck how we needed to meet our demands here. A little bit more on the warranty: 6-year parts, 1-year labor, our 10-year pump and plumbing. And this is the big thing. The truck is $689,998. The equipment cost for ladders, hoses, nozzles, all the hand tools is around $60,000. Our extrication tools are $45,000. To have radios put in every seat is $18,000. Our SCBAs are $49,000 for a total cost of $861,998. And that will be cost shared with the county. It'll be 50-50 paid out.
Where's the Pierce Manufacturing Company located?
There's 2 of them. There's one in Florida and one in Wisconsin. This truck will be made in Wisconsin.
Is that the major?
Yes, that's the only 2 they have.
Okay. No, I'm talking about Pierce. Are they the major?
No, there's other ones that there's E1, there's Rosenbauer, there's different ones, but we get a lot of service out of Pierce. We've never had any problems with ones we have, and they're really good to work with.
Chief, did I understand you to say that you would have, you would have the capability to refill your air tanks?
Yes, sir. Right now, the van that we have, the panel van, actually has a cascade system on it. This truck will have one on it where we don't have to take, right on the scene. We can fill it right from the truck. So we can have 1 truck on a fire call instead of 2. Right now, if it's a house fire, we take the panel van out and the engine. This way we'll have 1 truck on scene other than the county truck would be the tanker if we were in the county. And that would be it. So it would really limit the number of vehicles on the road and make sure we got the right stuff on it to protect our personnel.
How many ladder trucks do you have?
We have 1 ladder truck. Yeah. And all these trucks, this pump will have ladders on it, but it's not an aerial truck like the ladder truck is. It'll just have ladders that come like just regular ground ladders.
Now, how, in terms of, we're looking at a grant and a loan, right? Combination. Is the grant to the county or to both of us?
So the application is gonna be made by the town of Edenton.
Okay.
And so the grant would come to the town, but it would be prorated. The
Okay.
whole project would be prorated with the county.
Any idea of what those, how much they?
We don't, they won't tell us, but I know that they'll
That's
do,
not a good answer.
they do their best to help us here. Chief, can you just go over the timing of, the time frame of
Yes.
how long it takes?
It takes about 12 months, between 9 and 12 months for it to be built. So as soon as we get it in line, we'll be, we'll be pretty good. Just like this past year, we worked on it all year, and we're hoping to get it done, and COVID happened. In January, we accrued a $40,000 increase on it because of the timing. And it goes up every year. Usually around January, they'll get a 3 to 4% increase every year. So we're hoping to go ahead and get it in line to be built so it'll fall into next year's budget year. So it'll be in the 21-22 budget instead of having to drag that for another year and getting it in.
When you need repairs on your equipment at the station, do you have to bring people in?
If it's
From Pierce?
Well, we have had Pierce come in, we've had some valves replaced, they came in. We do a lot of work with C.W. Williams out of Rocky Mount because they're so close. Pierce is actually in Fayetteville, there's one in Virginia. So we kind of deal with C.W. Williams, and we've had good work relationship with them since we've been dealing with them. They actually do all our pump testing, and we buy a lot of equipment through them because they're so close, we can get it pretty quick.
Just, so the council understands, tonight we're asking for, approval to submit the application. And then once the application is evaluated, USDA will contact us and they'll likely want to schedule a time to come and meet with you and go over the terms and the conditions. And there'll also be, as part of the approval process, a public hearing. So this is really, the very first step in the process, and there'll be other opportunities along the way for you to make decisions. We're hopeful that we're going to get a good funding package from USDA, and that we'll be in the position to authorize the purchase, but there's still steps that have to be taken.
And all of this is 50-50 with the county, is that correct?
So the county participates in funding operation, maintenance, and capital outlay of the fire department. It's a formula, it's based on a 5-year average of the number of calls. And it generally runs anywhere from
46 to about 47% a year. And that's based on the number of calls. We pay, the town pays for about 52-53% of the budget.
Okay.
The county picks up the other 47 or 46.
Okay.
And that depends on the years. Like right now, we're on a year in county calls about 6 to 1 in the county. So and that's a lot of it is people been home, there's more accidents going on, there's more calls in the county, so.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions of the chief?
Can you estimate how many square miles the town has to cover?
From what I've been told from previous chiefs, we covered about 94 square miles of Trelawny County.
the town and the county. That's not-
Yeah, we run a third of the northern county and from Berkeley County line to Plymouth County and everything south. So we've got a big area that we ride.
Yeah, I know, I asked Marie when I first became councilman about, the base not having a fire truck down there. So, I was told that if we have fire people from over there in Washington County and the fire station down 32 be involved, but this is, some places is isolated, like out there past, 37, there's a lot of people live over that way.
Yeah.
And by the time a fire truck could get out there, the house would be,
And
Well,
the county has discussed that over years about adding substations, but the cost is just so, I mean, you're talking $600,000 for a truck and you still got to build a building, you got to have the men in it. So it's a lot of expense to start up the station, and then we have to find the manpower to handle it. So that's one thing they've been looking at for the last probably 10 years or so. And they discussed that last week at the county commissioner meeting about substations again. And so that's still in the works and talks with the county trying to do that. I just don't know how far that will go with the amount of money.
That is expensive.
Chief, you told us at one point, maybe a year or so ago, how long it takes for your truck to get down to the lower part of the county. It wasn't very long.
It's about 12 to 13 minutes
Okay.
from here out to Drummond's Point, the farthest point we go to. So it's quite a
It
haul.
wasn't much.
Yeah, it's quite a haul to,
Is that about,
get out there.
about 12 or 13 miles? Or,
it's pretty close to it, yeah.
yeah.
But it's a right little ways out there. It really is.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions of the chief?
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve, the submittal of the application.
Second.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So you can submit your application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that, takes care of all of our committee reports. And now it's time for us up here, if you have any items that's considered timely and important that you want to share with the, yes, sir.
Hi, speaking of trucks, I was thinking about our electrical truck with the 75-foot ladder. Have we received that yet?
Virginia, can you help me? Have we received the, line truck that we lease purchased last year?
Remember they said it would take about 360 days.
I'll have to verify.
What truck are you talking about? I'm sorry.
That's okay, the line truck that we, or the bucket truck that we purchased, the most recent one that we financed for the electric department, remember that was gonna take?
Yes,
But
yes,
that,
we have received that already.
good, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
One quick thing, Emery, do you think that, I mean, can we get, the guy from the Urban Land Institute, he was coming, Ed McMahon, and with COVID, it all got put off. Is there any way to sort of get him back on track, just to get in his schedule? Maybe for later, whenever people are traveling again. I think we put the money aside, yeah.
I just had a question for Samba. Samba, can you kind of give us an update where we are with the Worth Sports Center structure at Colony Park? I think you're.
Oh, you mean the sailing center?
Yeah.
So we've been talking with the utilities. It really takes a long time to get anything back from the utilities. But I really think that's a doable project. We've talked to the bar people and the movers, so I think within 60 days, I'll know something more.
Okay, because, some of those, I call them boat people,
Yeah,
they're asking me about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anne Marie and I have talked about it, and I think that I would say, if I can get we're waiting to hear back from the electric people.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion? Yes, sir.
Oh, we haven't
Yeah.
voted yet? Okay.
I'm not sure what we're voting on. I did have a copy of the items
I'm
considered
sorry.
timely and important. Each of you may recall, I raised some concern at our last meeting that we had not heard on three very important projects to our town, those being the grocery store, second grocery store, the brew pub, and also the Hotel Hinton project. We have received some more information, and I've actually received it personally, so I feel better about it. It's going to come across to the public as same old, but I at least feel better about it, and I think Anne-Marie Knighton feels better about it also. But first, as it relates to the second grocery store, I can confirm from having talked to people who are involved in that project that the owners of Edenton Village Shopping Center are in very active negotiations with a second grocery store. As these things work, it's very, very important to us, but we're actually a third party. And sometimes as a third party, we don't have permission to explain out in public what two private parties are discussing. And I know that's hard for our citizens to understand and hard for them to hear, but we can confirm, Ms. Knighton, that there are active discussions going on. Secondly, as it relates to the brew pub, the very same thing. That is still very much an active project. That too, because of the mechanism of how the business model may end up looking, is involving negotiations between private parties. And although it involves us, we are an outside third party looking in. And again, we don't have permission to disclose what those private negotiations are, but that's very much an active project also. And then finally, on the Hotel Hinton project, I think everybody's aware of the fact that the roof is being replaced. I think that's a very strong signal from the owners of that building that 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 building is still very, very important to them. The owners will be here in Edenton later on this week, and they will be meeting with Town Manager Knighton and also Jennifer Harris of Destination Downtown Edenton. And they are going to let them know, they're gonna receive a report, but they also are gonna let the owners know it's very, very important that they try to schedule a report to us, hopefully as early as the next meeting. So does that fairly kind of summarize where we are, Ms. Knighton, on those? And I'd also like to thank the town. Another concern that I expressed was the huge pothole at the intersection of Church and Broad by the post office, and that has been patched and is in much better shape than it was before. And Ms. Knighton, I'm assuming that's a state road, so we're waiting on them to do something final with that, and we were just doing our part on filling the pothole. Is that correct?
You're correct, it's a state maintained road, but we made that utility cut to repair, I think it was a stormwater,
Okay, so we're responsible
we're
for that.
responsible for it.
Well, I appreciate that being repaired.
Thank you, Councilman Hyde, for bringing up those situations and bringing us up to date on that. Does anyone else from up here have anything that they want to bring before the council?
I just want to say, I think the street repairs and road resurfacing are really come along well. You know, it's taken time, we've had some bad weather, but what has been accomplished looks good.
Emery, have you received any public comments to read into the record?
I have not, but let me check and see if there's any, Tammy will check and see if there's anybody in the overflow room.
No one waiting over there to speak, so. Okay, that concludes our program for tonight. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.